Hello, my name is Wood, and I will be going over four different comprehension strategies. The first one is think alouds, which is stating what you're thinking about while reading. A lot of students do not comprehend things unless they are stated out loud. From my experience, whenever we read together or when they're reading in their own groups and they are allowed to ask questions or just think about the things that they are reading, they usually comprehend it better. This strategy can be used for kids of all ages, and as I am with 7th and 8th graders right now, I see how this strategy really helps develop their metacognitive skills and they can approach text that they read critically. Because the issue with a lot of kids that I've seen is that they will read without thinking critically about what they are reading. But if they are allowed to just think their thoughts about what they're reading while they're reading it, they are usually able to comprehend it better. I've also found that while they are reading, if they are able to write down what they are thinking, usually after they're reading, they can go back and see their thoughts as they've read and compare them to the thoughts after they've read. So I find this strategy to be very beneficial to students. What else I find interesting about Think Alouds is that as I am reading, I am also telling the students what I am thinking while I am reading. And if they see me do it, they will be more encouraged to also think aloud while they are reading. So I model that every time when we have to read together. And over time, it builds confidence for them to just sit there and just think as they read. The other strategy that I'll be talking about is called reciprocal teaching, and it's when students act as the teacher. I usually do this in small group activities because I find that some students work better and can comprehend things better if they can tell other people or teach other people how they get to the solution to what they are reading. There are four comprehension strategies to use while doing reciprocal teaching, and the first one is summarizing. While summarizing, they are highlighting the key points to the text that they are reading, and I find this important because they need to learn that everything that you're reading isn't important, but if they can teach other kids the most important parts, then they will also comprehend why they are reading what they are reading. The second one is just questioning. They're asking questions about the text. And usually when students ask questions, other students are willing to answer it if it comes from another student. The third one is clarifying, which is addressing confusing parts of the text. Because a lot of the things that we are reading in class are a little difficult. But if they are able to just ask clarifying questions, it can lessen the amount of confusion that they are getting while reading. And the other one is predicting. While they are reading, they can make predictions based off of evidence about what's going to happen next in the story, or they can use their critical thinking skills that will also help them figure out what's going to happen next. And as time goes on, that comprehension kind of builds and they become more confident in what they're reading and what they're doing. The third strategy is the strategy that I use the most, which is question answer relationships, or QAR for short. And it's when students are able to ask questions about the reading and then they answer the questions afterwards. I use this all the time when we read as a whole class. I will read with them or they will read to me. And then as we are reading, I will ask them questions about what they are reading. And I give them a few seconds to think. And then afterwards, they will answer the question. Either they'll write it down or I'll ask them to answer it as a class. And I use this because I understand that the things that they are reading are hard and there are some parts that they might not understand. So I ask them questions to see where their thinking is. Can they understand? Are they comprehending what they are reading? And usually I ask a little surface level questions, but as time will go on, we will build up to the more nitty gritty critical thinking questions. My favorite types of questions to ask are the ones where they need to use their background knowledge about what they read. Usually when we read stories, like the book that we are reading is A Lesson Before Dying, there's a lot of background knowledge that they need to know about the time period that they are in. And I ask them questions about, okay, well, what happened during this time? What happened during that time? Like, for example, one of the questions that I asked is, what is the importance of the main character going to the jail every day, even though he's a black man being surrounded by other white men? And they will use their critical thinking skills to answer that question, because in the 1940s, um, black people were still facing a lot of prejudice, even though the Civil War had already ended. And I need them to know the things that happened in the 1940s so that they can understand why the events in the book are happening the way that they are. The last strategy is question order. When they asking questions about the order in the text itself, I need for my students to be able to think critically about why the author chose to include this and include that in the stories that they read. This also helps in their comprehension by allowing the students to fully engage with what they are reading, and it helps solidify their understanding of the text. We usually do this in chunking, like we'll split one chapter into 5 different sections, and each section will have a different question about why the author chose to include this type of dialogue, this imagery, these figurative language, so that they can fully understand why the author chose to write the way that they wrote. This will usually lead into whole class discussions, usually led group by group, because each group will get a different chunk of what they are reading, and they will be asked to question what the author did here and compare their answers to what the other groups think that the other did there. And I will usually facilitate while asking other questions, but it's really to build on their understanding of what they are reading and to see if they can comprehend everything that they are doing. I usually model all of these to see if they can use their thinking skills about what they know about the text already to what they have just learned about the text that they are reading. It also gives my students free reign to be able to understand if they know what they are reading. And then after one section is complete, we move on to the next section, and then we just do the whole thing over again. But this time it's with different chunks and different levels of comprehension questions. I usually use all of these strategies in one lesson. Sometimes I don't use the reciprocal teaching all the time, but we do think aloud and we do question answer relationships the most. They do question the author quite often, but when it's appropriate, then we'll do reciprocal teaching. And these are all the comprehension strategies that I have. Thank you for listening.